All right, we're taping this late afternoon Pacific time. We have had 7 to 8 hours to digest one of the most shocking sports announcements I can remember. People on Twitter were comparing this to Hulk Hogan joining the NWO. And I thought that was fair, but that was also professional wrestling. It was scripted. They set up the angle to some degree. There was no setup for any angle here. The LIV Tour, which has just taken a beating the last couple of years, which has turned into this moral quandary of should you go? Should you take the money? Are we allowed to watch it? Are TV networks, can they broadcast it? What's going on exactly? What about people's legacies? We felt it. We were at the Masters in April, and there was a little bit of a chill with the LIV guys that you could definitely feel in the galleries. And it was either you're on this side or that side. And now the sides have merged. Nathan Hubbard, our guy in the ground for the Fairway Rolling podcast. Did you see any of this coming? Like any of it?
I think House and I would tell you this was just a matter of time. The shock is in A, how quickly it happened, and B, nobody fucking knew. Tiger Woods did not know. Rory McIlroy did not know. And the 20 to 30 most important guys who who just were waving the flag for the PGA Tour on moral grounds, on legacy and history grounds, are also the 20 to 30 guys who don't have a contractual commitment, did not take a $200, $300 million check, and are sitting there tonight after a very raucous players meeting from everything we've heard in the last 2 hours, wondering, did I get sold out?
Well, you know who feels that way? Joe House. Joe House wanted to start a LIV Tour podcast and was pitching it. And you could have cashed that money, House, and then also just still had a PGA podcast, as it turned out. What did you do wrong?
Join forces with you? I don't know. I'm not sure the right answer to that. I will say this. I, like Nathan, am completely stunned by the timing, by the sheer speed with which this came together. But I will remind you guys, we were in the company of an industry heavy hitter, that one of the best things about the Masters, it really is golf Super Bowl. The entire industry comes out. The parties are great. We were at one of these great parties hosted by a great host, an industry insider, who on this topic shared with us a potential pathway for a kind of combination, for a role, but with the Saudis, integrating in some manner with the tour. And it made sense. What he outlined for us was something along the lines of the Saudis propping up this soft portion of the PGA Tour schedule and a soft portion of its tournaments where the sponsors, have been feeling like second-class citizens. And that's the fall series. But for sure, nobody had in their head that this was going to come together this year, that there was going to be something, mere months from the Masters. We're only like halfway through the majors. The U.S. Open is next week. So I don't think, the stunning aspect of it is this, the speed with which this came together. Right, Nate?
Yeah, I think this is a reflection of what trench warfare this ended up being for both parties involved. The Saudis got into this to gain influence and Western assimilation. The stories and around LIV and the highlighting weekly on the Golf Channel and all golf media pointing out the moral complications of the LIV League were not good for the Saudis. The discovery process in court of emails going up to the highest levels of government, not good for the Saudis. But it now appears that a lot of this litigation was draining the funds of the PGA Tour as well. You're going to hear a lot of questions, Bill, about who won this. You're going to be able to make a case that the Saudis have some measure of influence. You're going to be able to make a case that the LIV guys get the big check and now can continue to participate in the history of the tour potentially. There's a pretty good case that the PGA Tour, from a business perspective, won. You're not going to have a LIV Tour in 2025. I'm telling you that now. Like that, the product, which we have made fun of and joked about because it sucked, is going to disappear. But the end objectives of the parties involved in that tour seem to have won out today.
So this was basically a very fancy roundabout way for the Saudis to fund part of the PGA Tour. That's where we've landed, House.
And in many respects, it is the answer that I think they ultimately desired from the get-go. And they did bring to bear, the leverage that they had. They did make the tour uncomfortable. The tour changed its calendar in less than a year. The tour changed the way it compensated its players in less than a year. And the tour went around and really checked in with all its most important partners. Its TV partners are like, we're good, right? We're going to put all the best guys on TV most of the times to really bolster the TV product. And the Saudis all along, I mean, this is the thing on Fairway Rolling that we've been hammering when it comes to the LIV Tour. It's a bad TV show. It wasn't a good TV show. It wasn't a show that anybody wanted to watch. And it goes to, at the guts of it, how is professional golf popular enough to make a difference? And ultimately, Nathan and I would say probably not. There isn't really room for multiple competing tours where all the best guys aren't going to be together. Most often in that proof of concept, we have validation that people want to see the best golfers play often when we watch the Masters and we watch the PGA Championship, where LIV guys played quite well, and the interest in both of those championships was quite prominent, right, Nate?
Yeah, I think the thing on this one for me is the PGA has basically 3 of the 4 board seats. They can outvote the Saudis. They have control. To me, this feels a little bit like, we talked about this on Fairway Rolling a bit, but this feels like the Facebook acquisition of Instagram to me, Bill, where at the time people were like, holy shit, they spent $1 billion on Instagram. And now you look back and you go, oh my gosh, that move saved the company. And so for a little while here, there's going to be some murky waters because of the hurt feelings about the business decision to put these two things together. But golf is not big enough for there to be 2 separate leagues. And so when Monahan had a kill shot on the league, he took it. The question now is, what does he do about the 20 to 30 great players who have delivered a really good TV show this spring in these elevated events, one of which we saw last week, where all the best guys have been playing with each other more frequently on the same courses, and the ratings are going up? Those guys are not under contract. Those guys didn't take the check. Those guys waved the flag for the PGA Tour. How are they going to take care of them?
This story combines a bunch of different things that have happened with other leagues. Like, for instance, the ABA, when that launched in the late 60s, their goal was always to get a merger with the NBA, right? And then eventually the players intervened, and that led to a lot of Players Association stuff. And the ABA was like, fuck it. And they started competing. But ultimately, they wanted to get in the NBA. It was the same thing, not much different with the way the AFL and the NFL was in the 1960s. We'll start this league. We'll either compete with them or we'll merge. When XFL started with Vince McMahon, that was supposed to be an alternative league in the spring. It actually would have worked if the players weren't so bad, which is like, to your points, like there wasn't enough talent to sustain the 2 different leagues, which is kind of where we landed here. I wonder, from a Saudi standpoint, was this the end game all along, right? To spend this kind of money, and either it's going to work, you're going to get as many players as you want. What do you care how much money you're spending? Or was this a way to kind of bully themselves into the PGA? And if that was the case and it worked, is this our last stop? Could they do this with another league? Like, it's like in Succession when Jerry says to Roman, when Roman's like, we're going to try to stop the deal. And she's like, you're going to lose. The money washes away. I forget her exact quote, but the money washes away everything. The money's always going to win. And I wonder, like, is this the last time we're going to say that about professional sports in one of these leagues or foundations? What do you think, House?
Well, I think it's right to think in terms of precedent. This is the first time in American sports history that a sovereign nation's investment fund is partnered with the leadership of that league, and that sovereign nation. We've had, foreign owners own teams, Prokhorov with the Nets, and then Joe Tsai, who's American, but obviously,
and Premier League, we've had a ton.
Yeah,
yes.
But I'm talking about in the United States. This is a first of its kind in the United States. And one of the things that Nathan and I have pointed out with the Saudis is it was shrewd of them. So in their heart of hearts, I'm not sure that they really care that much about golf or professional golf, but I think that it was shrewd of them to go to an entity where the people, the TV actors, the most important players, they're independent contractors, right? There aren't contracts that they had to mess with. They could pick them off and create leverage. And if the ultimate goal is, as Nathan and I kind of laid out, for the Saudis to buy some Western acceptance, Western assimilation, ultimately, I don't think they really care that much about
just being in the mix.
Golf. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Nathan, why couldn't they do this with tennis? Couldn't they do this tomorrow and do the exact same thing?
I think they can. And that's where I would say the guy who drove this on the Saudi side actually is a big golf fan. And if you think about the objectives here of being accepted into Western culture, coupled with the real objective is to diversify their business outside of oil holdings.
Yep.
They know that golf is a sport played by a large majority of the high-profile business CEOs in the Western world. It's just a big opportunity for them to create a perception of acceptance. But I'll tell you what, they had absolutely no time. If golf was the vehicle, they could have given a shit about LIV. We have not heard word one from Greg Norman, who was the fiery CEO who led this whole thing, who's put his own reputation and literal unit out on the line for this league. He's not mentioned in the press release. He apparently received a phone call right before these guys went on CNBC today. Jay Monahan himself has been super evasive all day about whether there will be any concept of a LIV schedule in 2024 or beyond. This was purely a vehicle to gain acceptance. Everybody else in the entire narrative was used except those 20 to 30 great players who stayed, including Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, who were the leaders of this charge. Watch their Twitter feeds. We've heard nothing from those guys. The next thing that matters is what Tiger and Rory say.
House, is this the biggest golf story of our lifetime?
It's one of the biggest sports stories of our lifetime, right? We haven't really lived through a merger like this. I mean, the mergers in the NFL and the NBA happened when we were children.
They were slow to happen, and you kind of knew where it was headed the whole time.
Yeah, this has no precedent in today's dollar terms and the kind of media leverage that's out there right now. I mean, to Nathan's point about the guys we haven't heard from yet, there better be a plan for those guys. Those guys, all along have had leverage. And it's a business 101 proposition to get the buy-in from your most important constituency if you're going to try and pull something like this off. One of the aspects of this deal that was announced is the creation of a for-profit entity that will house all of the media rights and everything. That entity, there's nothing impeding that entity from writing contracts that look like NBA contracts. If you want to sign Jordan Spieth to a 10-year contract for $400 million, you can do it. This new entity can do it. If you want to do the same thing with Rory and JT, there's nothing stopping them. And I sure hope that's a cornerstone of this business model if they have any hopes whatsoever of successfully, presenting competitive professional golf on television and getting buy-in from the most important constituency.
Yeah, that's a lot of words to say. They got to pay Scotty. They got to pay Jordan. They got to pay Justin Thomas. They got to pay Rahm. How they do it is going to be semantics and financial wizardry. Those guys have to absolutely get paid more than they do right now. It's coming.
Did you just take a shot at House for being loquacious?
Never.
I just
like a shot at House.
I haven't had enough to drink. I mean, that's the problem. We had to work all day today, for Christ's sake.